the most effective way of keeping people on board and ensuring that the message is sent and received, but there's true dialogue, and so but it can certainly be supplemented by Q&As, by written communication, by visual communication, certainly presentations from leaders of the change, whether that be the respective CEOs or other executive leadership in different parts of the world, possibly. That at least it allows people to actually understand the face and the personality of the organisation that they're now part of.
Welcome to the Manage Self, Lead Others Leadership podcast with Nina Sunday for experienced and aspiring people managers. This show will help you explore ways to become a more intentional leader. Each episode, host Nina Sunday speaks with some of the brightest business minds on the planet who share a passion to elevate and transform team culture. Workplace culture hides in plain sight. Is yours flourishing? Join the movement to make your workplace a better place to work. Are you ready? Because it's time to manage self, lead others.
Dave Musson is Managing Director Oceania of Aspen Tech in Australia and a strong information technology professional. Dave Musson has led many teams over the last 30 years in merger and acquisition activities and transformations. And this episode, Dave will explore how a leader navigates the path of leading a team as a new corporate owner comes on board with different expectations. How does that play out for customers, especially when the value proposition might be changing? Welcome, Dave Musson.
Thanks, Nina.
So, I'm interested, I'm sure all the listeners are interested in what are the lessons you learned as a leader during a merger and acquisition process?
I think one of the main things that sticks in my mind is the fact that the journey is individual for each person involved in the process. That they bring their own values, experience, and backgrounds to what could be trivial for some, but actually quite profound for others. And I think understanding that the journey is different for everybody, is an important premise to approach the challenge, with that in mind. Experience and backgrounds to what could be trivial for some, but actually quite profound for others. And I think understanding that the journey is different for everybody, is an important premise to approach the challenge, with that in mind.
Yes, that's an excellent perspective, Dave, because people are individuals and they probably all need an individual conversation. Would that be right?
Oh, definitely. And I think it's as much understanding where they're at and finding that out, before then trying to make a contribution to that journey.
If it is an individual experience, how important is it that everyone has a one-on-one conversation with you about how the upcoming changes will impact them personally?
I think everybody will benefit from a one-on-one discussion, but I think that it doesn't mean that that's the only method of communication. I think everyone learns and hears differently, and I think using multiple methods of communication is important to make sure that the messages are sent and received, and in both directions. And sometimes I think it's good to set context to provide information. But then to hear the response to that information and to understand where people are at on that journey.
Well, as you've led many teams in different companies over many years in transformation, and you've probably seen other leaders do it poorly, what are the pitfalls that perhaps new leaders listening might want to know about?
Look, I think the most concerning thing is when you lose people along the way, that there's a drift, a separation between the dialogue that you want to be having as a leader and what's being received by your team. And if you don't keep track of where people are at in that, it's easy to be more focused on what you're sending rather than what's being received. And, you can quickly diverge away and lose the message. And that's dangerous because you leave people behind. And I think that's when you run into trouble with ultimately helping them move through the process, or even lose them out of the process altogether.
So have you found rumours starting that are completely misinformed?
I don't think a transformation would be complete without without an active rumor mill. And I think accepting that's really important, because it's a thing. It's going to happen. I think it's how you manage it and how you deal with it. And providing better, more authentic information when you can and as you can, but not necessarily fighting it, but working with it and through it to make sure that you can stay on message, and the team can actually benefit from being part of that journey and feeling like they are part of the conversation, as opposed to just a mere recipient of it.
That's fantastic. Yes, because I suppose that you're balancing the fact that some things are not set in concrete or even decided yet. And if you reveal too much and then it changes, then people feel like, they get change fatigue. So it's about, but they also don't want them to feel that you're withholding information. So it's finding that balance. That would be tricky.
I think that's right.
Now, a new corporate entity takes over the company, and the existing company has a culture. The new entity has a different way of doing things. So how do you marry those two? Is there a secret to doing that?
I don't think that there are secrets. I think I've seen it a number of times. I think that ultimately you are part of a different organization. The old organization really ceases to exist. And even the acquiring organization may well cease to exist in its previous form, because the combination of the two creates something new.
So you said that it's not just one-on-one conversations, but communication strategies. What are some of the ways you've used communication, different formats?
Look, I think there's lots of things you can do, and people absorb the information differently. But I think it's hard to avoid direct verbal communication, one-on-one communication, as being the most effective way of keeping people on board and ensuring that the message is sent and received. But there's a true dialogue. And so, but it can certainly be supplemented by Q&As, by written communication, by visual communication, certainly presentations from leaders of the change, whether that be the respective CEOs or other executive leadership in different parts of the world, possibly. That at least it allows people to actually understand the face and the personality of the organisation that they're now part of. All these aspects are important, because I think they come together to create a mental picture in people's minds about who we are now, what the organisation is, and they might be surprised to find there's actually a lot of similarities, not just differences. I think that's an important process.
And thinking back over the years where you've done different transformations, and if it was an acquisition, perhaps, to what extent did you have to let people go because that was the requirement?
Look, I think that it's always regrettable when you have a close knitted team, when the team that you require in the future is not the team that you had in the past. At all levels. And I think that that is a challenge that needs to be managed. But if that's managed well, then I think that creates opportunity as much as it actually creates, I guess, negative circumstances for individuals.
And of course, we've got to think about our customers and our suppliers. How do you navigate that relationship in the instance of an M&A?
Yeah, with integrity and authenticity, there's no people can smell when you're not being authentic, and you're not coming from a position of integrity, and you certainly need to come to terms with it yourself. Like you need to manage yourself in the transition as much as you lead others. And so I think that's an important aspect of making sure that your internal dialogue, your internal narrative, it has also got an authenticity and clarity.
So that's your own self-talk.
That's it.
So what advice can you give somebody listening about self-talk during this whole process?
Well, recognize that you're a participant in this as much as the people that you manage. That you're human. You have your own fears, concerns, opportunities, hopes, aspirations. That you're human too. And I think managing yourself, understanding how you get the information that you need to understand what's happening, to be at peace with that, and come from a position of integrity and confidence when you actually are helping your team through that, I think is important. But I think you don't necessarily need to have all the answers or all the solutions either. I think part of it is about being true to yourself while I think it's important to be positive and optimistic, because that certainly leads an opinion within your team. They're diverging too far away from what you believe to be true is equally dangerous and difficult. And I don't think is part of what will bring success for the organisation or for your own team.
I'm thinking about the messages that people tell themselves in any tricky situation, and I think there's a difference between making negative statements like, "Oh, this isn't going to work. This is a mess." All those sort of negative statements of that are opinion but sound like fact, as opposed to, I can see their issues. How can I make this work? So maybe turning it into a question. How can I make this work? How can I get more people on board? Rather than, oh, the people aren't on board. This is terrible. You know how there's that pessimistic, heavy statement approach as opposed to an optimistic, well, it's thorny. It's a thorny path, but we can navigate our way through it. So have you sort of made that distinction in your head when you talk about managing your own thoughts?
Look, I think it comes back to the individuals you're talking to and their preferences for how they think and work. I think there's probably a couple of categories to that. I think first of all, having managed engineers, and people who are very problem solving oriented, you can approach it from a perspective that speaks the right language to enlist them in solving the problem of how we best manage and navigate the change. For people who maybe are less focused on that and more focused on dealing with the emotive aspects of a change, then understanding where they're at and helping them work through that may be more effective.
What's your sort of approach to delegation and getting people involved?
Look, I think being an active participant is always going to be preferable to being a passenger, and I think that the more you're a passenger, the more you feel like something is being done to you, as opposed to something that you're contributing to resolving. I think the more people involved in the a transitional effort, the more people that can be enlisted to help the organisation move from point A to point B, rather than just being the one who is moved from point A to point B. I think the more that you're engaging people to contribute to, and they feel like they have actually helped build the organisation that we want to become, rather than one that is imposed upon them.
Now, of course, if it's okay to mention, you started your education with a Bachelor of Information Technology. Then you moved on and gained an MBA. And then you also gained, what was it? A Master of Law in specializing in corporate law. I mean, very broad and, rigorous background. So tell us a little bit about your career as a information technology specialist.
Well, look, I think throughout your career, you're a sum of your experiences and the competencies that you collect I think, always become part of you. And so every job you do, every challenge that you have, you approach with the sum of your parts. And so throughout my career, I've always endeavored to address weaknesses and build out strengths that are probably a combination of personal interest and, what I think might make me more effective in what I'm doing.
And would you say that not all leaders are as interested in seeing what their weaknesses are and turning them into strengths, which sounds like is what you have done?
Everyone's different, and I think I've had a method to do that in not necessarily conscious, but I've taken an approach. Everyone's on their own journey about what they do and what they're seeking in life.
May I take just a minute to tell you about one of our partners that helps make Manage Self Lead Others happen, Apex Trader Funding, showing futures traders how to execute entries and exits with precision. Apex Trader Funding educates people in what is a futures contract, how to make money and hopefully avoid losing money with a futures contract, how does a trade happen, different markets to trade, how to make the decision to trade. And I must mention this disclaimer, you have to put in the learning time to really know what you're doing, to manage risk and manage profit, to know when to withdraw your profits and invest them elsewhere. How to start? Go to the FAQ tab at apextraderfunding.com. That's https apextraderfunding.com. Follow the links to do the masterclasses with Apex Investing Institute. Now, here's a promo code. When you are ready to apply to get started with funded trading with apextraderfunding.com, use my code Nina Sunday for the listener discount of 25 to 50% off. I invite you to go to episode 106 of Manage Self Lead Others podcast to find out more with my conversation with Daryl Martin of apextraderfunding.com. Have you got an approach towards inspiring people or keeping their motivation intact? Any thoughts around that?
Understanding what people like and what their aspirations are, what their journey is important for that. And you can't always know. No matter how inquisitive you are, I think some people are more open than others. Some people share, and I think that's part of the transactional, nature, the two-way nature of of how we manage change and how we manage, our place in transformations in organisations. In that, sometimes you need to also think about how to be a good participant, not just, a good leader of the change. Because the more open you are, the more you embrace change and look for opportunity within it, the more opportunities will become available to you. But also being open to the fact that those opportunities might not actually be what you thought they were. They might not be in the organisation that you're in at the moment. They may well be somewhere completely different, but no less an opportunity for you as an individual and, in relation to your own aspirations and expectations.
Well, them's inspiring words, Dave. Is that the sort of thing you tell people, especially if their morale is starting to go downhill? It's like inviting them to see it as an opportunity to grow, even though they're kicking and screaming, moving into the future.
I think the challenge is how to lead people to that conclusion, because it's got to be something you believe.
Yeah.
But it's okay if you don't, everyone's different.
And it seems to me that really, if you have a question or if things aren't going exactly as you would like, is to seek advice and to get second opinions. Because would you say some CEOs, it could be ego, it could be lack of self-confidence. They try and do it themselves without actually going outside for advice. Have you seen that sort of situation occur?
Oh, sure. And I think, again, I don't think there's a right or wrong here. I think it's everyone's on their own individual journey, and you build your own life skills in terms of how you respond and act and manage those sort of situations. If you're good enough to internalize that and do it all by yourself, then good on you. But I don't think I've ever met anybody who is perfect at that. I think but everyone values how they navigate situations that are difficult. differently. I think, you have your own method, and you find what works for you. Look, I think the most interesting thing is, where are your people at? How are they going? How are they coping? And, what does this mean to them? Because I think, asking that question prompts you as a leader to challenge yourself as to, have you checked? Have you explored that? Or are you just assuming no response is acceptance? Because
that is such good advice. That just because you don't hear anything doesn't mean they're not thinking in their own heads that, that maybe this isn't how they want it to be. So silence is not acceptance. Excellent. And in closing, have you got a book that about leading people or some aspect of culture that you can that you get inspiration from or have enjoyed in the past?
Look, there's been a lot of opportunities, and I think you've referred me to a few yourself. But I think, to be honest, the main inspiration I get is from articles, whether it be Harvard Business Review or similar publications that are very targeted on specific topics. And so, while you can browse and you can farm those sort of things, I think it's amazing how they just go into your personal database in your head, and that there might be an insight or a way of thinking that challenges you, or a perspective that you may not have taken yourself, that comes out of nowhere when you need it, when you've actually been open to that kind of stimulation and open to that kind of challenge. So
I agree. I find Harvard Business Review is creme de la creme of business ideas, and I'm pleased to say that this week our podcast, Manage Self Lead Others, was at position 35 in the Australian management charts, somewhere between Harvard Business Review and Zendesk. So so very proud of that, where, our little podcast is sort of touching hearts and reaching corners of the world. So thank you for your expertise, Dave, and sharing it, because one of the things I've made sure I include is people who are working in the field who can share their experience, we say, at the coalface. And I found some of my most popular episodes have been people that they're not experts, they're not authors, they're not speakers, they're actually working in the field, but they've got a wisdom to share. They're a sage in their industry. So you're one of those, Dave Musson. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Nina. It's been a pleasure.
You've been listening to Manage Self Lead Others. My name is Nina Sunday. And today our guest was Dave Musson, Managing Director Oceania of Aspen Tech in Sydney, Australia, and a strong information technology professional. And over the last 30 years, he led teams that were experiencing merger and acquisition activities and transformations. He shared with us a wealth of wisdom, and it was my pleasure to have a conversation with someone who's working in the field. When you listen to Manage Self Lead Others, if you can give it a rating on Spotify or a rating with a review on Apple Podcasts, we'd appreciate it. Tell a friend. It's also on YouTube channel. So thanks for listening, and until next time, bye for now.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.